Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we're going to be talking about the third and final day of the first Test match at Lord's between England and South Africa. I'm Jack Hope, and to talk you through things, I'm joined by Jack Fox. How you doing, Jack? It's been a couple of months since you were last on the show.
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Good to be back. Looking about a pretty bad day for it.
I think the last time you were on it might have been after Rishabh Pant smashed England everywhere, so maybe, I'm just going to throw it out there. Maybe you are the problem.
Yeah, I think that's what Baz will be telling this evening, right?
It's the wrong guest on the Cricket Podcast. Anyway, before we get into things, a few messages. We are on Patreon, patreon.com/The Cricket Pod. You can find us on social media at The Cricket Pod. If you're watching on YouTube and other things, or you'll be listening if you're not on YouTube, hit subscribe. That's important to us. It keeps us moving in the right direction, keeps us growing. And this show is presented by Manscaped. Use the code CricketPod for 20% off at manscaped.com. That's the code CricketPod for 20% off at manscaped.com. I'll quickly summarise the day, and then Jack, I'll ask you for your sort of general thoughts on how things went. It started with South Africa still batting. England removed Maharaj late yesterday, so it was Rabada and Marco Jansen at the crease. Rabada fell second ball of the day to a great catch from Stuart Broad off the bowling of Matty Potts. Then South Africa threw the bat around in kind of like reserve style. It wasn't full throw. It was a little bit of throw, but also a little bit of caution. They built up a total of 326, which gave them a pretty formidable lead, to be honest, in the context of this match. England then came out to bat, and it didn't go very well. They lost their first wicket at 20, their second wicket at 38 just before lunch, and then all of the rest of the wickets before tea bowled out in, 37 and a half overs, meaning across the Test match, England didn't last they lasted 82.4 overs, which wasn't fantastic. I think a lot of credit has to go to South Africa's bowling. They were very good. We had a very fast spell from Nortje today, which was exciting. Some good spin from Maharaj, coupled with their performance in the first innings, led by Rabada, which was excellent. Jack, what did you think? Headline thoughts from today's cricket?
It was always going to happen, wasn't it? Like this day was always coming for this England side, the way they've been playing. It was probably more spectacular than he necessarily thought it would be. But yeah, like you said, when you bat in this aggressive style, there's obviously always going to be these massive blowouts, massive lows to go, the massive highs. Like if that wasn't the case, someone else would have realised in the last 150 years of Test cricket to just try and hit the ball for four. But yeah, you can't take anything over to South Africa. They were just so good the whole time and just so consistent and varied angles of attack, varied pace, varied skill set. And it just felt like every time a new bowler came on, they were fresh and they were just they were going to take wickets the whole time, pretty much.
Yeah, I think starting with South Africa is probably the place to start. They've won this match by an innings. They weren't, according to bookmakers anyway, they weren't favourites at all by any stretch coming into this match. But from ball one, they have been practically perfect. The early spells on the first morning at lunch, or 5 down at lunch maybe, might be 5 down at lunch. At lunch, or 5 down at lunch maybe, might be 5 down at lunch. Were great. Rabada picking up a fifer was a fantastic moment for him, and South African cricket, and for just anybody that likes fast bowling, I think. Then when it came to the batting, they were everything that Dean Elgar kind of promised they would be. Nuggety, difficult to get rid of, determined, and when they had their opportunity, they cashed in with Maharaj against sort of a tiring attack yesterday. And then they came out today, and again with the ball, were just excellent, really. It was sort of other heroes. I think Rabada was off the field for quite a while this morning. Didn't take any of the early wickets. It came back on when England looked like they were going to achieve parity to end things. But they look like, I mean, from the bowling side of things anyway, like one of the best teams in the world, Jack, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they've got, you say, Rabada's got what is it, the best strike rate of any bowler with 100 Test wickets or something, and Ngidi averages about 21 with the ball in tests. So they're pretty serious. And then you've got the rest of them. I think especially when you're playing that five proper bowlers, like they are. I mean, it isn't like Jansen is kind of an all-rounder really. He is a bowler that is capable to bat, but someone you'd pick in your test side pretty essentially. And it was just far too much for England.
Yeah, it was. They were formidable. I don't know where you go. And the spell that really stuck out for me was Nortje. I think his first 13 balls today cost him 18 runs. He was shouting into his hat. He was upset. He was kicking the floor. And then he bowled like a couple of absolute pearlers. One to get Bairstow, sort of angling in on the stumps. I think it was an in-swinger, and then it kind of kissed the seam and moved away, or kissed the slope and moved away, and it picked up Bairstow's edge. And then he followed that up with an even better ball to get Alex Lees, one that would have hit the top of Alex Lees' stump had he not edged it to Kyle Verreynne behind the stumps. It's pretty exciting, isn't it, watching a guy bowl 95 miles an hour
for runs because he's got all those backup seaming options. Yeah, he was just terrifying today. I mean, Folks just was in a completely different postcode that ball that got him out that he was just kind of wafting at. And like you say, that Lee's delivery was, if you were a worse player, you'd probably just miss it. You've done reasonably well to hit it almost, which is a bit of a cliche, but I think it's sort of true in this instance. But yeah, he's just when he's off form, he can look a little bit all over the place sometimes. But when he's on form, he looks like he's pretty much unplayable.
Yeah, I mean the sort of amazing thing was how quickly it went from he's spraying it everywhere and Bairstow's doing a Bazball to nobody can hit this guy. He's too fast for everyone. It was basically from one ball to the next. I think it was 18 for none off 13 balls, then 18 for 3 off 5 overs. It was fearsome. England's batters, they had a hard time of it, right? Is that in your mind because where do we apportion blame? Is what I'm going to say here. Are we saying that Bazball's broken? It doesn't work. Are we saying that England are crap again, or are we saying that South Africa were just a bit too good on this occasion? Or are we saying that the pitch was terrible, worse than Ahmedabad, as I've been tweeted at a couple of times today?
I think it's probably a bit of all of them, barring the last one. I mean, Bazball isn't broken. It's just a high variance strategy, and realistically, England collapsed plenty of times this summer. It's just someone's come out and played the career of their innings, but they played the career of their innings like twice in the same summer. That was going to happen. South Africa bowled incredibly well, and I think also kind of the way England play, being aggressive and being sort of bottom loaded with their, probably fair to say, the two weakest players opening essentially. I think really suits a team like South Africa, because when you've got four seamers like that, if you make like 2 early breakthroughs, you can say, well, we're not coming back for a full spell, basically, whatever happens. And then you can just throw the kitchen sink at it. Like even if they collapse in the opposite order, say, but Lees and Crawley face 60 balls each, Nortje might be coming in and thinking, well, I might have to come back, tomorrow morning or late tonight. I can't just come in absolutely like steaming. So I think England's strategy really kind of does play into South Africa's four seamers a bit, and also just having a guy who's like a walking wicket opening obviously doesn't help.
Yeah, let's talk about the walking wicket really briefly. They backed him this week, or during mid-test after the failure in the first innings, and the quote was something along the lines of, "We don't look at Zak Crawley for consistent runs. We look at Zak Crawley for match-winning innings." As though somehow, scoring less runs less frequently, but in, I don't know, I guess situations which are perceived to be more valuable, is better than a guy who just consistently scores you runs. I thought there was such a logical error that it hurt my head a little bit. He's run out of rope at this point, right? I mean, where's he even getting rope from?
Yeah, it's that quote was really weird. It's almost like they're kind of like Crawley has basically probably scored. If you were to distribute Crawley's runs in first class Test cricket, like the way he'd want to distribute them is how they've been distributed to get picked. He always scores runs at just the right time. It's almost like they've built, almost like they've bought into that as something that is inherently valuable in itself. Like decided that because he scores runs to get picked at the right time, that's like you say, better than just scoring runs. But yeah, I think it's, at this point it's just sort of kind of cruel on Crawley, really, isn't it? I mean, he's getting picked. He's completely out of form and also probably not good enough. And when you combine those two things, it's just he's never going to make runs in this series realistically
No.
because the bowling's just too good. He's just not got a good enough idea of where his stump is, basically.
Now, the other thing that I thought was slightly weird about that quote is that the runs he has. So there are 4 innings that I remember Zak Crawley playing. There's the 200, which was a draw, so it wasn't really a match-winning. It was a draw. There's his other 100, which again happened in a draw on a flat pitch, and again I think we can file under not a match-winning innings. Then he made runs at Hobart in a match that England lost, and again, depending on your definition of match-winning innings, in my definition anyway, it wouldn't qualify. And then he got 50, I think, in that Ahmedabad test, didn't he? He was maybe the only England player to score any runs. And again, I think we probably have to file that one, I'm afraid, under not a match-winning innings. So I didn't even get it from that point of view. I mean, the only thing with Crawley now is that I think it would be so funny if he did make a century in the next match that I sort of want to see like how people will react if it happened. It would completely blow people's minds. And a part of me, likes chaos and kind of likes it when people who are really angry about something get their comeuppance, even if those angry people were right in the first place. So yeah, I'm torn between two things. I mean, like from the point of view of wanting to see the best Test cricket, Zak Crawley cannot be in this team anymore. From the point of view of it maybe being really funny if he did get 100, and then maybe after he got the 100, like credited London Spirit for getting his confidence back or something like that. I think like Twitter would melt down, and I also sort of want to see that. But it's pretty tricky to see him continuing. I've got a theory that they're lining up Keaton Jennings as a temporary replacement for Crawley. I don't think they really know where they want to go as a 3-year project, opening wise. But Keaton Jennings has kind of been batting okay. They know he has made runs in international cricket. He's got a couple of hundreds. He's not a complete bust in international cricket, and there's sort of no risk if he comes in and gets 4 ducks in a row. Then they say, oh well, back to Crawley. At least he made 13. Where do you sit on who could potentially come in, or who would you pick if you were the vacant head of selectors for England?
Yeah, I would probably be along the lines of something like Burns, essentially. I mean, he just makes county championship runs over a long period of time. Looks like he has a reasonably organised game, but obviously he missed that one ball in the Ashes. Now he can't play cricket. But yeah, it's.
He did miss it by a long way.
It was a long way, yeah. But yeah, I could definitely see James coming in. I think it kind of feels a bit like from that quote you were saying that England currently value players that make big flashes in a game, and James hit that triple century, wasn't it, earlier this summer? And I think that they'll go for that kind of what they perceive to be a little bit X factor. And obviously he is a perfectly decent player. And again, like you say, they're not burning a young talent if he gets worked over by a very good bowling attack. It's probably not a bad stopgap option for them. Obviously, if it works, it's good. And if it doesn't work, you're not really having this sort of debates about how we ruined the next young thing, getting them into early. You've just given a guy another go, and he's not performed essentially. Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you get a couple of years out of him. Like it's yeah. The other big thing that's sort of been doing the rounds. I mean, my view on this is that England, despite some very notable individual performances earlier in the summer, are still quite a fragile batting lineup, and in conditions which aren't great for batting against a good bowling lineup. And I don't think they've faced a really, really good bowling lineup this summer. This was very much on the cards. I mean, I think this is on the probability curve. This isn't a particularly fringe event, I'd say. England being skittled twice for under 200. But a few people have sort of been saying that England might have come into this undercooked. Do you think there's any credibility in that argument? It's been a while since the last test.
Yeah, I'm not really a buyer of this. I mean, there was one person, wasn't there, going off about this just now, I think. But it's as one of the guys from Quick Risk pointed out, like the South Africa team have played, I think, 6 first-class games in the last like 4 or 5 months, and they've all been Peterson.
So do you mean 6 cumulatively?
Yes, they have
Okay.
since the last testing, they've hardly played at all.
Yeah.
You know, players, the Indian players constantly go from series to series without playing first-class cricket necessarily. But, I'd be surprised if like Cowley even remembered what state team he plays for in the Ranji Trophy, realistically. I don't really see it. I mean, maybe you'd want a few games in, but I don't think that, like, suddenly Alex Lees or Zak Crawley is an amazing opener because they've faced 2 county attacks in the previous weeks. Like, realistically, I think it's just very good bowling and, like you say, fragile batting that's been overperforming, and at some point if you're overperforming, you're going to underperform realistically.
Yeah, I mean, I very much think it's quite an easy narrative thread to latch onto without a lot of credibility behind it. Earlier in the summer, for example, Bairstow scored all those runs having played the IPL just before, and not even necessarily being that good at the IPL. To be honest, it was. He had his moments, but it wasn't an amazing tournament for him. I don't remember Root playing that much earlier in the season as a prelude to the Test series, and he seemed to kind of go okay. I remember Broad and Anderson saying it was ridiculous, the idea that they'd play 7 county championship matches before they played an England game. I remember Broad playing once, maybe for Nottinghamshire. I'm not sure he bowled that much because I think it's quite flat. I mean, like the guys who I guess did bat a lot earlier in the summer were Lees and Crawley, and we go back to the point you made 5-10 minutes ago. Probably the weakest players in the England team. It didn't do them much good to have had all that warm up cricket in preparation. I generally think you're either good enough or you're not. And sure, there's preparation you can do, but I think I said this yesterday. Actually, I think a lot of that preparation can happen in the nets. I don't know. You actually need to stand around for 4 days to feel in the game.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm just looking through the scorecard to see whether there's anything else that we should potentially flag before we get to obviously the big question. Is Bazball dead? Is this it?
Yeah, no, I don't think. Well, certainly not from the perspective of are they going to keep doing it anyway. But I think it's going to continue. I mean, you've got to take the lows and highs, and at some point presumably a middle. There's no reason to throw a whole approach out for one game, especially when it's a high variance approach. It wouldn't make any sense.
Cool.
So,
yeah, I kind of agree with that as well. I mean, from what I've seen here, England are going to struggle with the bat this summer, or for the remainder of this summer, because South Africa's bowlers are really good, and unless the pitch is really flat at the Oval or Old Trafford, I think that they'll have something in between the 5 of them to relatively take wickets. I mean, it's not that India or New Zealand have awful bowling attacks, but Shardul Thakur and Siraj weren't good in that match, and that's a lot of overs delivered by bowlers who aren't good. Jadeja wasn't particularly good in that match, and that's a lot of overs delivered by him. And then you've got sort of 2 bowlers to bowl out an opposition side, and I think that's sort of as much where India fell down as England kind of stood up. And the same can be said more or less, I think, for New Zealand, who at times really only had one threatening bowler. I mean, Trent Boult had a good series. I don't think anyone else really did. I mean, Jameson went home pretty early. Tim Southey was probably historically bad for his career, and Matt Henry has never really cracked Test cricket. Got some treatment as well. So there's that. We have some questions through on Twitter, and some of these are pitch related. So I'm going to ask for your hot take on the pitch. Amar says something along the lines of, the ICC needs to take some action here. What do you think with respect to the pitch being bad? On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was this pitch, with 10 being awful?
I don't think it was particularly bad at all. I mean, it depends how you define as bad. If you define the ball seaming as bad, then it's bad. But it wasn't seeming, I don't think, prodigiously. I think it was just very good bowling. I mean, it was probably maybe a 6 or a 7 if you're talking bowler friendly. yeah. But I think, I mean, South Africa got plenty of runs in it. I mean, Nortje got runs in it.
Mm.
Just, he's not exactly the most amazing batter of all time. So yeah, I think really it was just England making the pitch look a bit worse, and also these aren't the sort of bowlers really for South Africa that I think the pitch makes massive amount of difference. Like they're going to hit the pitch relatively hard, bowl a good length, and bowl reasonably quickly. And if they get a bit of movement, obviously they're more threatening. But if they don't, they're still just on that good length, which is probably the most important part of bowling fast anyway.
Yeah, what you'll
Um,
always get at Lords, I think, it will never be an absolute road because it is on a hill, and that means there's. Well, I mean, that's the truth. That means there will always be some deviation off straight, and so if you do hit a good line and a good length, you will have some joy, even when it, as a surface, looks relatively flat. I didn't think there was, any particularly outrageous bounce. I don't think the seam movement was particularly outrageous either. I just thought that over the 200 overs of the match, whatever it was, 180 overs of the match, I thought South Africa hit a good line and a good length way more often than England, and with that little bit of assistance from the slope, unlocked some quite poor batters. Yeah, I'd say 6 or 7 out of 10. I don't think anyone needs to be reported to the ICC here. I don't think it's a ploy. Nobody arrived overnight and sort of said, right, lads, let's build a slope here. It's sort of a pre-existing feature of the pitch, and one of the teams is much better at exploiting it than the other. We have another question from VJ, basically asking what won the match for South Africa, and suggesting that it was the bowlers. So maybe one more time through their bowling attack. I would go maybe as far as saying the best bowling attack right now in the world. Would that be is there a lot of recency bias in me making that claim?
Not necessarily. I mean, they've got some very, very good bowlers in there, and also because they make the decision, which most teams don't, to literally just play 5 bowlers. That obviously does make your bowling attack better than if you're Australia and you play 4 and a little bit of Cam Green or whatever. So it's probably true. I mean, I think it would be not as clear if they played a more conventional style, drop Jansen and then they just got 4. But I think with the 5, it's I think definitely, because you've got 5 bowlers you can depend on, variation in skills, they won't get tired. They're all in form as well, which does help. I mean, give it a year and they're out of form, and then it looks very different. But it's at the moment looking very good.
Yeah, I mean, it opens up a potential vulnerability, doesn't it? At 7 and 8, but kind of Maharaj and Jansen are. They'd both be very good 8s, I think. So you can kind of afford to have both of them, and it's like having a good 7 and a bad 8. It doesn't. I don't think it trades off too badly. It's like when England sometimes play Sam Curran as number 7 or Wokes as number 7, or or those two in combination. You're not like, oh, this is absolutely diabolical. It does kind of work. Maybe leaves them a little light, but yeah, they're 5 pretty frontline bowlers, I think, and they were good. Last couple of questions. One from Laxman. What changes will England make for the next test? Are they going to go back to Sam Curran, he suggests?
I think they're going to really. His record's exceptional. He released it from about 11 foot, involved with the old ball. There's just really no reason not to bring him in.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was sort of strange that they didn't have him in. I'd have had him in maybe for Broad, maybe for Potts either. I'd have thought he'll play the next match. I think, yeah. I mean, in my view, Robinson's England's second best bowler at home against after Anderson. It might be their best bowler away from home. It's a relatively limited sample size, but he is going to be tall in all conditions, which helps. Excluding in Asia perhaps, or some Asian conditions where just being tall might not be enough, but he does have a clear weapon, and I think because he bowls kind of slow, people lump him in as just another right arm seamer, but he is doing something that basically 3 other people in the world do, bowl from 7.5 foot high or 8 foot high, and that's good in cricket.
Does help, yeah.
On our Discord, Larn asks, are there any positives from this Test match from an England point of view? And we'll wrap up on that, maybe an optimistic note. So what anything positive that you saw, Jack?
There are positives in as far as and Anderson didn't bowl bad stuff like that. But I don't think there's any real positives that England wouldn't have already known essentially. But I'm just looking through the scorecard now, and I mean Lee's played well in the second innings, to be fair, and then got a Butte. So you can, Lee's played relatively well, but I don't think there are any sort of real positive takeaways for England. I mean, they know their bowlers probably going to be all right most of the time at home, if not good, and that their batting's going to struggle. And I don't really see anyone that's put their hand up and done something we didn't think they could already do. Really, I don't know what you think, but
Yeah, I sort of broadly say the same. There's no major positives in losing by an innings. That's pretty bad.
the weekend.
I mean, we can watch lots of the 100 at the weekend, which everyone will enjoy. They can replace 2 days of boring Test cricket with 800 fixtures. I think that they will be happy with how Lee batted in the second inning. I think he did play really well, and honestly, I'd love to. I'd really like to see the expected wickets model on that delivery from Nortje. It was so fast, and it was going to hit the top of off stump, and he managed to get just enough bat on it to divert it round the corner and into the keeper's gloves. It moved. I mean, that spell from Nortje was phosphorus. And I don't think there's any shame in getting out to that, but he did bat well till that point. If you were really scraping the barrel, you'd maybe say that Leach bowled okay as well. Like in terms of what he actually did, it was sort of all right, and otherwise, it was pretty bad. But some of this I think could be chalked up to just running into a good team on a good day. Some of it could be chalked up to perhaps having a couple of passengers in the batting unit, and some of it can be chalked up to deciding you're going to play this aggressive style and knowing that occasionally it isn't going to work. And for the good points or for the good days, you are going to have to accept that. Hopefully, it's not an equal number of bad days. Hopefully, you have sort of 3 good days for every bad day. And I think if you're doing that and you're England with this player pool, you're doing okay. So that's my take on it. Anyway, we're going to wrap up now. Just a final reminder that you can get yourself 20% off at manscaped.com using the code CricketPod. It's on the screen if you're on YouTube. You can see at the bottom it says presented by Manscaped. Once again, if you're listening, CricketPod is the code. Get 20% off plus free worldwide shipping at manscaped.com. That's all in the show notes, as is our Patreon page. Somebody has just joined, I think. TJ is all I've got. So thank you, TJ, for signing up to Patreon. That keeps us in business. It's the number one way of supporting the show. And if you want like the number 2 or 3 way, I suppose, hit like and subscribe wherever you are listening or watching.